Good morning, everybody, and welcome to The Art as Well. This is the first episode of 2024, so a very happy new year to you all. On this chilly morning, it's quite chilly out, but very, very sunny, which is nice.
It is.
My guest this morning is the painter and sculptor Paul Darcy. So we've got a lot to get through this morning, so let's go straight over to him and say good morning. Good morning to you, Paul. How are you?
Morning, Alan. Thanks for having me, and I'll get over my nerves in a few minutes, and then we'll get on with it.
Like myself, no problem to you at all. So where exactly are you, Paul?
I live in Skerries, North County Dublin,
Okay.
beside the sea there. It's a beautiful, beautiful town. Apparently, it's getting a lot of notice in newspapers as being one of the best places to live in Ireland.
Is it now?
We'd have to agree with that.
Don't tell too many people, or I might go the
Yeah,
opposite.
well,
Yeah. And how long have you been there, Paul?
we're here nearly 30 years now.
How are you?
Yeah, here a long time. When myself and Teresa got married, we went looking for a big barn for me to set up my studio, and we found one, and it was in Skerries. So we moved here, and been here ever since, basically, just coming and going. But basically, this has been our base for our family. We have 3 kids, and all growing up now and all over the world.
Yes.
Must take after me because I love jaunting around the world.
But not painting necessarily.
They're not painting, but
No.
I'd be painting around the world, yeah.
Sure. And on that subject, because whilst you were born in Ireland in the Coombe Hospital, you didn't stay in Ireland very long. Your parents moved elsewhere. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's a funny story insofar as, I was born in the Coombe. Both my parents, one was a North Sider and one was a South Sider, so that was a big thing. So that's why they actually had to leave the country.
That's understandable.
But no, what happened was they were about to buy a house, and they were gazumped, believe it or not, in the late 60s. And my father in particular got very upset about it, and he said, look, I'm going to go somewhere where you don't have to put up with this rubbish. And he was a boilermaker by trade. So there were offers to go to Africa and get well paid and live a different life, which he promptly done 6 months after I was born. So I spent my childhood in South Africa and Namibia, and it was very much Little House on the Prairie existence for me anyway. No TV, no radio, no nothing like that. It was an outdoor life.
Yes.
And, so that's how I grew up.
Sounds idyllic in a way, doesn't it?
Well, for me, absolutely it was. I know you had apartheid and you had issues in Africa, in South Africa in particular. But for me as a kid, 100% idyllic. I mean, even to this day, I don't have a terrible interest in TV or stuff like that. I just, it's just not, I wasn't brought up with it. So
not on your radar, yeah.
Not on my radar, no. So we used to play with, actually, Teresa bought me these cufflinks she found in an antique store. Well, as a Christmas present. We used to play with scorpions and snakes and all sorts of exotica, but they were only just animals and pets to us. So that's the sort of lifestyle I had. Yeah.
Wonderful. And how long did that last? About 12 years, was it?
12, and then we moved to Namibia, which Namibia, for those who don't know, is essentially a big desert along the coast, northwest of South Africa, just the next country up, if you wish. And my dad was working on a uranium mine there, and so we lived in the desert, lived in a mobile home for 2 years, and then eventually we got a house. And it was, again, outdoor life, fishing, running around the desert and acting the maggot. And that's essentially was my childhood.
And do you recall at all drawing at that stage? You know,
No, I was one of those people, because I think most kids, if not all kids, essentially they draw from a very, very young age. But I was one of those, a bit like Pauline Buick, I just forgot to stop. Around 11 or 12 people stop because suddenly they get external criticism, and it kind of puts them off. Well, I was one of those that just didn't stop. I just kept going. So
Yes.
I've been doing it all my life. Yeah.
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 And how long were you in Namibia before you came back?
3 years.
Hmm.
3 years, around 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Right.
then we came back here. My parents, believe it or not, at that age, we were going to, myself and my brother were going to be conscripted into basically army boot camp because we'd been in Africa. We were eligible to join the army there, which is compulsory. And my parents said, we're not having any of that. So that was the reason we moved to Namibia. And then my parents, my grandparents were getting old, and so they wanted to come back. And then we came back to Dublin, moved to Navan, moved to Lusk, and then moved around a few other places, and finally settled down around here. Yeah.
So by this stage, you've probably been into 25 different schools.
Actually, you know something, I with my contemporaries and people I speak to, I still probably hold the record. I was in 9 different schools before.
Were you really?
Yeah. And I wasn't thrown out of them. It was just because we were moving.
Oh, I know. I understand that. I know you're a good boy, Paul.
Yeah. Well, we have to say that. We're on telly.
That's it. Exactly. So when you left school, did you go into art college, or what sort of path?
Yeah, I was studying in NCAD at night under Desmond Carrick doing life drawing. That's an interesting story because I was 16, 17 when I went to life drawing first. I was just doing the night classes, and Desmond said, "You're way too young. You shouldn't be here." And I said, "Well, it doesn't say you have to be 18 or 19. So he said, "Look, you can stay." This is in the 80s now.
Yes.
"Look, you can stay one class." And then I said, "Okay." So by the end of the class anyway, he realized that I could actually draw, and the reason I was there was to draw. So he allowed me to stay anyway. So I was probably the youngest student in NCAD, but doing the night classes. But then after that, I went traveling to India for a while. Quite a while, and traveled back through Europe, Poland before all the wall came down. Very interesting traveling.
And were you married at this stage, Paul?
Oh, God, no.
No, okay, all right. No, just checking. Just checking.
No, I wasn't. I was traveling solo and having a great time, and came back. And then when I was in Warsaw, I got involved with some students there, and they were in the galleries copying paintings and stuff like that. So when I came back here, I went to Raymond Keaveney in the National Gallery and asked him, could I copy paintings in the National Gallery? And he thought it was a very unique idea. It had never been done before here. So this again was kind of late 80s. So I was locked into rooms in the National Gallery, whether it was a Spanish room or the Dutch or any of the others, to copy paintings. And at the same time, then I said, well, maybe I better get a proper education. So I also joined to do a degree in fine art in Dunleary. The Dunleary one didn't really work out for me because I was working at the same time, and it didn't work. After about 2 years, I had to drop out. But I was still painting and drawing. It's just that part of the education didn't work for me.
Okay, but, so you had a number of jobs, did you? Sort of
I worked on the building. I worked as a butcher, but I was coming back, and you'll see later, a friend of mine, a farmer friend of mine, gave me one of his potato sheds to work in. So I set up a proper studio and everything. And so I was working there at night or any hour that I could find to paint and draw and stuff like that. So I was constantly working towards it. I was very lucky that early enough in my career that I got a couple of breaks. And
I was just going to ask you that, Paul. You know, where was that sort of defining moment where you said, right, this is going to be full time?
Okay, so what happened was I was working, painting, and I was also doing a bit of teaching. And the teaching was becoming more and more
demanding.
demanding, but also took a lot of my time. I was suddenly becoming a full-time teacher, and I had to make the decision whether I was going to be a teacher or whether I was going to be an artist. And so I took this decision after I got very honored, actually. I got an exhibition. I was given an exhibition in the Guinness Hop Store, which was the premium place in 70s, 80s, 90s, well, maybe early 90s. Yes. And they gave me a solo exhibition, 40 paintings.
Wow.
And that was my break.
Yeah.
I kind of got...
What age were you at this stage?
Oh, God, I was only early 20s. I can't put an exact age on it. But anyway, I mean, the Guinness Hop Store at the time was showing Rusk and showing the Independence and stuff like this. It was like a serious venue. And so that was kind of the breaking point. And then I said, no, I'm going to go for it. And from then on, I was very lucky. People commissioned me to do like serious collections of paintings and stuff like that. So that's how it kicked off, to be quite frank.
Very good. Okay. Yeah. And you're very fortunate in that you were given this shed, I think you call it, but it's quite elaborate, isn't it?
Well, it's just a potato shed. I had to fit it out myself. I had to get rid of all the young potatoes out of it. No, it was a great spot. I mean, I came from working in my bedroom to a proper studio, and I wouldn't have been able to do the Hop Store without it, to be frank. Really? You need your own space when you're an artist and you're trying to work at it, you know.
Okay. Why don't we have a look at that now? Because it is upstairs from where you are.
Yeah.
The signal, the internet signal is nil. So you very kindly did a sort of a tour around on video.
Yeah.
I think helped by your son, if I'm right.
Yeah. I tell you this much, I've learned a lot about technology in the last very short period of time.
Good. No harm. So what we're going to do is we're going to go straight up there and have a look around. It's around about 5 minutes, and then we'll come downstairs back to you live here.
Okay.
And you can show us
I'll show you this studio.
This studio there. And then we'll work on from there to look at your sculptural work.
Yeah.
And then some of your paintings after that. Okay.
Great. This is my first studio, which a friend of mine gave me, apart from my bedroom, that is. When I was 19, he gave me the shed to work in. And it's a place where I created the Guinness Hop Store collection. I was in the studio from about the age of 19. I love when I'm looking at videos of other artists. I love to have a good look in their studio. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you around the studio. Here I have a rack for my plein air paintings, which I tend now only to do really during the summer, to be honest with you. I used to do them during the winter, but I've given up that. That's for hardy bucks. In this corner I dump all my sketches for my life drawing. I love doing life drawing on a Monday in Malahide at the minute. And so I just put them all there. Over here is my table with all my bits and pieces on it. It has ground, it has varnishes and retarders and accelerators, all that sort of stuff. Few bits of paint. I have these tubes that I brought over from England. Whenever I'm mixing a batch of colour that I particularly need to keep, I would mix it up and I'd put them in these tubes. They're handy to have. And then this area here is my trusted turntable for sculpting. I mainly use it for clay, but I've done stone and timber on it. As you can see, it's a very hardy, tough turntable, and it's on wheels, so I can move it around the studio whenever I need it. Then come to my main easel up in this studio anyway. It's a crank easel. It can take very large work, and I've modified it as is my want, just to have this kind of table area on it, and I have a glass on it for mixing paints, etc. I added this bit on for, toilet roll, rags, brushes, etc. I'm mainly using the one downstairs, the studio downstairs at the moment. So that's why the studio is actually quite clean. Generally, it's far messier than this. This area here is another great work space. It's a very sturdy table. And I, again, sculpt and do bits and pieces on it. I'm working on a stone carving here at the minute of a curragh in Portuguese limestone, and there's patterns and stuff like that I'm working on there. Over here is my main painter's rack. I built this when we were doing up the studio, and it served me really well. I'd really recommend that if you can have some storage area for a studio, put it in straight away. And behind you, you have another wall that I use for storing paintings that are half finished. They essentially, it's a place where if I'm tired of working on a piece, I can just put them here, let them rest and let me rest. And that way I can come back to them and then carry on. It's amazing if you let work just rest for a while. The next time you come back to it, suddenly you've solved all the issues you needed to solve. It's something I'd recommend. Don't rush to finish a work. Allow it to gestate a bit. Coming back to the wall, this is where I do all my larger work. It's allowed me to paint all the Egret paintings. It allowed me to do any large scale work that I have. And it takes anything from about 4 or 5 meters in width. It's great. It's a great space to work with. But as you can see, I had a bit of an issue in the studio with light coming into the studio, and it can be very harsh, particularly during the winter, because the sun is low. So I put in this blind, which is very handy, and it's a 2-part blind. It has, on the bottom of it, has a kind of a, I don't know what you call it, a mesh on it, which just softens the light. So you'll see that the light will soften. And then I also have a blackout part on the top section of it that will give me complete balanced light when I pull it right down. And you can see there now, the light is essentially a soft light, more balanced light, and it's easier to work with. That's really it now for this studio. I'll talk to you now in a minute downstairs in the downstairs studio.
Very good. That's some potato shed.
God, that worked well, didn't it?
Did, yeah, yeah. So that's upstairs. So yeah. Why the 2 different places? Is it providing a different function, this downstairs one?
Yeah. Upstairs in that studio is bloody cold during the winter.
Ah, right. Okay. So this is your winter studio.
And I'm getting old and grey now, and I just couldn't deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
So now I have this studio here for the winter, and it's a small studio, which most studios are. Let's face it. Mm-hmm. But I've made it in such a way that it can accommodate essentially 2 paintings, one on this wall and one on that wall over there. I'll show you around it because it's practical. It works well. So
and they're flush in with the wall, whereas a sort of a freestanding easel takes up a lot of space.
Yeah. You're
really maximizing your space.
Yeah. So I'm maximizing my space. These easels are all attached to the wall.
Yeah.
And there's a sheet behind them, and they're on a ratchet system that goes up and down. But here is my area for storing my paints, and also all my bits and pieces. And I wanted to show you this. These are tiger boxes that you used to be able to buy in, what do you call that place? You know, where you get all the little bits and bobs, Tiger or something like that. I don't know what it's
Tiger,
called.
Yeah.
But so I use these pallets. They're essentially Perspex pallets that I've grayed out on the back. I don't know if you can see that.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Grayed out on the back, and that's what I use as my pallet. But I have about 10 of them, and they fit into these boxes like that. And then, you know, the way when you're painting, you can stop or you want to take a rest, but you want to keep the paint that's on it. So these tiger boxes have a bit of sponge that I've glued on the inside of it. And I use clove oil. Don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
Clove oil, and I put a drop of that onto the sponge and then close it.
And why clove oil?
Because it takes the oxygen out of the air, and it preserves the paint, because the paint can't oxidize then. And these yolks, these things, can last. The paint can last for weeks in them without having to
dry out.
Going off. And then when you open them up, you can take them out, and you just click them in there, and away you go, as basically taking off from where you started, or where you finished, I mean.
Sure,
so it's a great.
So you could use that for outdoor painting, or en plein air, as they call it.
These, actually, I have a smaller one that I use for when I'm plein air painting. I'll show you that in a little while. And they're the same system, but the box and the clove oil is a really good way of storing your paint.
Yeah.
I would tend to work on 2 to 3 paintings at a time. And so therefore having that good to go saves time.
I think not everyone might realize, Paul, that, you know, if you've got paint and you have to leave it overnight to start again in the morning, certain paints will dry out if it's not protected like that.
Yeah, well, essentially what you'll find, and everybody probably knows at this stage, the earth pigments would tend to dry extremely fast, and then the likes of the cadmiums and the yellows, whites tend to dry slower, and vermilion as well, cad red as well, tends to dry slowly, but the earth colors would dry very fast, and that saves them as well. But the principle still does exist, that the browns, even with the clove oil, will be the ones that go off first. I'm doing a lot of drawings at the minute, and when I travel, I tend to collect pigments. So the likes of that pigment is from Morocco, and I collect those as well. So I have those there as well. I have drawers and bits and pieces. I have more rolls of drawings from the life drawing, and that's basically that area there. Then over here, I have, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that?
Yes.
Over here, I have another easel, daylight lamp on it, and it's a ratchet easel. A friend of mine was getting rid of these easels. She was doing art classes, and I bought 3 of them off her, and I took 2 of them apart and attached them to this wall. And there's an 8x4 sheet here that allows me to hang paintings and bits and pieces on it. And then this ratchet system allows me to basically bring the easel up and down and up and down. I have 2 of them there. I remember years ago, who was it? Da Vinci's apparently said that if you're working small scale, work in a small room, it saves distraction, and he's probably right. But, this is another little gadget thing that I made, and essentially, I don't know if you can see here. Can you see that? This is a way of drying the canvases, particularly during the winter, and these things attach to your radiator like this. I should patent this, I think.
You should.
They attach to your radiator, and then you can sit your canvas on it, and it takes the heat off the radiator and helps dry them faster. It's I find it very, very useful during the winter, because paintings, particularly oil paintings during the winter, take forever to dry. So just sitting them up there allows them to dry.
They're sufficiently far from the heat not to be destroyed either.
Well, I mean, you've got convection, and it's far enough. You're not putting them in an oven, so it works great. That's all.
You're very inventive, Paul.
It's practicality, really. You know, you're working 5-6 days a week, and these things annoy me anyway, so I have to come up with a solution to allow me to be more efficient, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No,
that's the studio anyway. I suppose.
Okay.
Oh, that easel there is a Julian box easel, and I've had that since probably. In fact, I've had that since about 84, and that easel went around India with me in the 80s.
Yeah.
It was nicknamed the coffin because the size and the weight of it, and it was on my back. I had straps on it, and I went around India painting with that. But I still have it. I'm still very fond of it.
Very good.
But that's my studio, really.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Paul. Because we've got a lot to get through, I'm going to go straight into some of your sculptural work.
Okay, so this is the first monumental sculpture that I was commissioned to do in 2005 after I returned back from New Zealand and Australia, where myself and my wife and our kids went a bit of a walkabout while I was doing a collection of paintings called the Suitcase Collection. It was a very interesting project. It's based on the Greek tragedy and comedy faces, and also I use the totem poles, the Maori totem poles, as a starting point for it. Really enjoy doing it. It's done in a particular way. It's hand concrete applied, very similar to the same method of building up a clay sculpture, except the scale is quite big. Really interesting when I was doing the commission, in that it was the first time I had to deal with committees and also with budgeting and timelines and structural engineers, etc. And it was a great learning experience. I really enjoyed doing it. It is nearly 20 years old now, and it's still looking good. It was named Oscar by a woman by the name of Maya Mackle. She was I don't know. She was an amazing person, but she seen it while I was building it, and she said that's going to be called Oscar, and nobody dared contradict her. I know, she was an amazing woman. That's outside a theatre, and she was a stalwart of that theatre. She was an amazing person. Yeah. So that's where the name came from.
Very good. Okay. Now, a lot of your work is based on commission. Am I right?
Yes, a lot. Apart from my collections, which I work on, yeah, a lot of my work tends to be commissioned. Well, particularly these days, you know.
Sure, yeah. And this is one that I think is it in Skerries, the seals?
Oh, the seals, yeah, that was commissioned by the Chamber of Commerce here, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to have a look at that now, Paul.
Oh, yeah. And essentially what they want, they were converting an old bit of land into a park called Floraville, and on the front of it was a community park, and what they wanted to do was create a community sculpture. And seals would be synonymous with skerries, and so I came up with the idea of carving out of limestone, this Portuguese limestone in this case, a family of seals. And the idea of the seals was that it would be kind of an interactive sculpture, in that people would be, particularly children, would be able to climb all over them. So they had to be constructed in a kind of a bulky way that they wouldn't break with people jumping all over them. And that's what I done. So it's you can see there, it's this basic composition. You'll see later the actual composition. And essentially it's a family of seals, and it represents the community, and that is, I don't know how old that is. It's a good few years now, but I get stopped in the street by parents saying my kids absolutely love those seals because they're jumping all over them, and the amount of photographs that are taken with kids sitting on those, you would not believe. I don't think I've ever passed it without somebody taking a photograph. of kids sitting on top of it. So it served its function in terms of the plan that we had for it.
Yes.
I really enjoy doing it.
How long did it take, Paul?
Oh, off the top of my head, I'd say maybe 5-6 months.
All right.
I had to split stone. That stone came in from Portugal. I had to split one piece of the stone. I had to split it horizontally, which a lot of people said was impossible. But I thought about it and worked out a technique to do it. And so the baby seal was taken off the father seal. They were upside down. And there you go, you see the kids. But I mean, it's lovely. And actually, that Carnegie Library at the back is being redeveloped at the minute. So it's really going to sit in beautifully with it afterwards. But as I say, it's a meeting spot in Skerries anyway.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to have that sort of interaction with people as well, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I remember when we put them in first, within a half an hour, there were kids jumping on top of it, and a person was passing by and gave out hell to the kids for jumping on it. Because, I mean, it was a kid's natural instinct to go,
Yes.
you know, which was great. I was chuffed.
Yeah, very good. Tell me why Portuguese limestone?
And I had this discussion with the committee at the start. The reason I went for that was it will yellow out with time, and it would represent more like building a sandcastle. So it would have that color tone, and that's the reason. Basically, I wanted it to associate with sand and that. Whereas if you went for anything Irish, it would have been grey, and I don't think it would have been fitting.
And just as a matter of technical interest, what are the chances when you're carving stone like that you might find a little fault or a crack and the whole thing splits?
Well, there you go. The first piece of stone that came from Portugal, I rejected because there was a hairline crack in it. And I remember you're going to show the Thomas Ashe sculptures.
We are, yeah.
I went down to Three Castles and they'd taken out this huge block, and it again had a problem with it. And so you have to reject it because you couldn't be 6 months into a piece and then suddenly find out
disaster.
It's a fault. So, and the thing is, when you get a block, you're only looking at the surface. Some of the big sculptors that are, you know, being paid hundreds of thousands for their sculptures, they would get the stone X-rayed. So to find the faults in it.
Interesting.
But,
yes.
You know, I couldn't.
No, it's just I often wondered about that, and we hadn't discussed that, so
I'll
try that. Let's go straight on to the Thomas Ashe one.
Okay, Thomas Ashe was a 1916 hero, and he has association with North County Dublin, around Lusk in particular, and I grew up in there. So it was in 2017, it was his 100th anniversary. He died after being force-fed while he was on hunger strike in Mountjoy Square. And so I wanted to do a sculpture to commemorate this. And while I was floating the idea, where he's born just outside Dingle in Kinnaird, which is his homestead, they also asked me to do a bust of him. So I done this sculpture, the life-size one. It's more than life-size. And I also was doing the bust at the same time. So it was a lot of work, and it was on a very tight timeline. But essentially, I created this sculpture, which is in Lusk, and the other one, which is in Kinnaird in Dingle.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic project. I absolutely loved doing it. For this one, I had to create a maquette first. So a 1-to-1 scale maquette, I created it with clay, and then I measured off it. It's very technical to measure off it, and then created this sculpture. And the maquette just had to be destroyed afterwards, which was sad. But anyway, so this is just basically it being shipped out. Because it was the 100th anniversary, there was a big procession and a big unveiling, and yeah, that's the story behind that.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So they had, Thomas Ashe was part of the pipe band. He founded the pipe band in Lusk, so that's the reason the pipe band were there. And that's the reason for the sculpture being not carrying a gun, but carrying bagpipes.
So we're going to go straight into your paintings.
Okay, paintings. This is one of the paintings from the Guinness Hop Store exhibition. It's called Mother Earth, and there were 40 of these paintings. These were the ones that were painted in the potato shed. They were quite controversial at the time in terms of the subject matter they were dealing with.
And what specifically was that?
Sexuality. They were quite controversial paintings, but
yeah,
that's
all right.
The first exhibition.
Yeah, okay.
So then these are paintings from the Donnelly collection, which consists of about 30 paintings. And this particular one is of Holy Cross. At the time, I was using newspaper articles, and anything that struck me within the news, I would put onto a board, or particularly boards, panels, and then I would paint a narrative or story over them. And this is Holy Cross. It's 26 years old now, where they stopped children going to school. And so you can see there's a Protestant and just a nationalist kid walking to school hand in hand, and this was the ideal. There's a few bricks and books there. Daffodils are my favorite flower, so they were in there. But essentially, this painting, it's a big painting, was about that, commemorating that. And funny enough, on the 25th anniversary, Father Aidan Troy rang me up, and he wanted a copy of it, of that painting, because he has a parish now in Paris at the Champs-Élysées,
yes.
and it's an English parish, English-speaking parish. So he'd seen this image, and he asked me to send him one, so I sent him one with sign and everything. So that's where that comes from. That's one of the Donnelly collections. This is a big jump. Okay, so as I said, we went walkabout a while ago with the family, and this is
something that I know is very sensitive, and it means an awful lot to you, Paul. So I do understand. So if I can just give you a breather there. Okay. This involved a good friend of yours from New Zealand, who actually died on a plane very young, and left his wife and children, and this is his daughter. So I don't know, Paul, if you want to talk much more about that, or maybe move on. But it's a very beautiful, beautiful painting.
Thanks for saving me there. Kiana. Yeah, it was a very tough time.
Yeah.
I'll talk about the Mori Boulders. The Mori Boulders are a phenomenon in New Zealand, where the earth shoots out these huge balls that are
volcanic.
Like a football. But
it's volcanic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's volcanic. It's like they're 10 feet high, and they're unbelievable things. They're things that come from another world, like the Giant's Causeway. But these things are huge, and when I seen them, they blew my mind.
Yeah. And
so at the time, I was painting a lot of celestial. I still do paint a lot of celestial stuff, and so I added this. And Kiana had lost her dad, and I said he'd just gone traveling, and so this painting came from it. And there's a footprint of him in the sand.
Yes, very emotional. Yeah. It's wonderful. And I actually looked up those boulders, Paul, after we spoke about it, because I'd never heard about them.
Right.
And I looked them up, and they're extraordinary things. I mean, they're really sort of alien spacecraft.
Yeah.
So hence the inclusion. Yeah. Okay.
These are, I created a collection while we were traveling called the Suitcase Collection. And this is one of them. I actually went to the Antipodes to discover how they painted over there and found essentially it was all Western painting. The indigenous people really, well, the Aboriginals did have a sense of it, but the Maori, really carving was where it was at. And so I got very involved in carving. And kauri would be regarded as their sacred tree and sacred timber, and they carve everything basically from that. It's as large as a sequoia redwood, and it's as old, it can last 1,500, 2,000 years. So this is the painting that's based on that, essentially.
Yeah. Okay.
This is a painting of a Polish woman who I met down at a wedding in Cork many moons ago, and I was blown away by her in terms of this aura that she had about herself.
Yes.
And I actually got my wife Teresa to ask her to take a photograph of her, because I didn't want to sound lewd or
you're being very diplomatic.
Yeah, thank you. And so anyway, she had this aura about her, and so I wanted to do this painting. I have in all my paintings over the years, I have this interest in different realities all living together at the same time, and I've always had it. And she exuded this, and that's why I created this painting. The stained glass element comes from just a pure coincidence at the time. There was a Polish artist in the National Gallery who was exhibiting, and God, I can't remember his name, but I think I did send you a note of it. But anyway, basically, the paintings were of a stained glass-esque idea. And so I just married the fact that she was Polish with that idea, and then the broken glass, and then the edge of a planet to show the reality. And to this day, I love that painting. It's a
lovely composition.
Powerful for me. Yes. People look at it, they may not get it, but for me, that it means a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
This painting is actually a sculpture.
Yes.
It's the Jack and Jill eggs that were done a few years ago. I was asked to do a painting of it. And it's a celestial painting again. On the other side of it is a young baby holding a dandelion. And on this side is Brendan Gleeson. Brendan was, I'd asked him to pose for me because I was doing a series of portraits.
Of local people, wasn't it?
Of other people, famous Fingal people, and Brendan is from Fingal. And so I asked him to pose for me. But when he came to the studio, I was doing sketches and stuff like that. And I couldn't really find anything to include him in. And I know he's a big supporter of charities and stuff like that, the hospice. But so when Jack and Jill came to me to do this, I said, grand, this is what I'll do. And I've done this. I've done this over Christmas, and I nearly got divorced because I basically spent the Christmas painting this thing.
I know.
And
what size is it?
Huh?
What size is it?
It's about 3.5 feet, maybe.
Is it? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. But at the opening of it, didn't I meet Robert Balla, and I was talking to him because he was a great influence. I skipped him, but he was a great influence in my early life. He wrote a book about artist handbook about how to survive as an artist. And I asked him, have you still got that in print? And he couldn't believe that that anybody even remembered it. But it was an incredibly practical handbook as how to survive as an artist. Yes. And so I showed him this, and I said, that egg is because of you. And he kind of laughed, and we went on.
Yeah.
He was very influential to me when I was young because of the book and because of the way he survived as an artist.
Yeah. Okay.
And in the 80s, surviving as an artist in Ireland was tough.
Sure. Yes.
This is from the Smock Alley collection. It's I have, as I said to you already, I have 3 kids, 2 daughters and a son, and it's basically about being a father and trying to deal with the very, very clever, astute children in our lives. So it's the bull in the china shop, except from my childhood, it's a rhino.
Yeah.
And basically walking on eggshells. You can never say the right thing depending on the mood I'm in and they're in. So that's where that comes from.
Yes, I'm sure a lot of people can identify with that, Paul.
Yeah. This is I do a lot of portraiture, commissioned portraiture, and this one really tickled my fancy. I was asked to do this woman had qualified as a surgeon, and her parents asked me, out of the blue, would you do a painting of her for her graduation? So they had a couple of images. So I worked with this one. I worked from photographs, and asked me to do this. Well, they didn't have, this wasn't the image they were really after. They were after another one, but I said this was the best one, and so I painted this for them. And she is a surgeon, but she's a veterinary surgeon, and this is what I came up with. I really like. I love the composition of it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. There's great sort of movement in it almost, isn't there?
Well, and the light of this surgical lamp. I love it. Yeah.
Lovely.
This one again is another commissioned portrait. I've been very lucky with the people that come to me, because they're not looking for the traditional. They're happy enough to engage with me and discuss philosophies and stuff like that, and then come up with different compositions. So this one is of Theo. He's sitting on a sofa, a leather sofa, reading a book. And we were having a good old chat, and what's her name? Greta Thunberg, you know, the movement for environment that the youth have started. I was just talking about this to him, and I was saying, I want to create something that acknowledges the youth and their input into our environment. And so we came up with this composition, or I came up with this composition. And basically it's the sofa coming apart because of melting ice. And this painting inspired me to do an entire collection called the Melting Iceberg Paintings collection. And I've exhibited them all over the country, and I'm still exhibiting them. I'm still adding to them. And there's my latest one here. It's called the White Rhino. Can you see that?
Yes, just about, yeah.
So I'm always adding to the collection, but that came out of a happy coincidence of meeting this lad and having a discussion. So that's the way things happen sometimes, you know. So that's that one.
Very interesting. Yes.
Yeah, this is a collection that I'm working on as well. I work a lot, and this one's of jellyfish, and the painting here is the next one I'm working on with it. The jellyfish, I love water, and I love being underwater. I just love the substance and the life that's in it. It's alien to all of us, and yet we're on the same planet. But the thing that fascinates me about jellyfish is that they have no brain, they have no skeleton, they have no intestines, and yet they still exist as an organism on our planet.
Yeah.
And that's why I love them. I just think they're aliens living here.
Yes.
Know more about them.
Exactly.
So it's just a pure fascination for me. That's why I paint them. And I've got, I think I've got about 6 in the collection, 7 maybe in that collection.
Yeah.
I'm continually working on them.
What's interesting, or what's a problem really when we're showing images like this, is you don't get a sense of scale.
Yeah, I was saying,
you know, and it's one of the limiting factors of doing an exercise like this on Zoom, or indeed any media where you're not seeing it in the flesh as such. So what we've got next now, and we're nearly coming to the end of it, is a video of you talking about 2 or 3 works. But you beside them, so you can see the scale. Okay.
This is a large painting of mine. It's about 2.5 meters by 1 meter, and it's based around the white egret, which I've been painting for many years, and as part of my a project that I've been working on. As I say, the birds originally were pelicans, and I've kind of developed into painting egrets. I think they're more elegant, and they act as like a sentinel or a watcher of life and nature. And I'll show you a few others now in a few minutes, but this is one I particularly like. So this is another one of my egret paintings. Again, a large piece. The bird is taking flight. The painting is about 3 meters, again, by nearly 3 meters in height. It's a very serene painting, and it also has a quirkiness or a kind of a surreal element in the painting with the water dripping from the feet. The palette is very soft. This is one of my favorite paintings that I've painted, and by coincidence it was also commissioned by Country Crest. I like doing commission work because you get a chance to talk to people about their philosophies of life and what they see visually. So this was a long process but an enjoyable one. What the purpose of this was to try and show the value of our food and also add a kind of a spiritual element to it. So in parts of the painting, there's space and soil and stars and even a comet. And I even got a chance to put in a crooked carrot, even though most people in supermarkets want everything straight and round. As I said, one of my favorite paintings still to this day, even though I painted it 10 years ago.
Okay, this is the final one that we're going to show, and it's significant because it's your local area.
Yeah, so these are the egrets again. This is over an aerial view over the harbour in Skerries. Something I've become very fascinated with, getting these images of aerial landscape images. They're extraordinary, and so this is actually the second time I've used an aerial image. And you're up with the bird, flying with the bird. I find it fascinating. I know there's quite a few artists that are using aerial imagery now. It's something that's very modern in terms of we've never really been able to get such incredible footage of our Earth from above, and it's readily available, you know.
Sure.
So this is one of these images. I've worked on three images of this sort of idea where the composition is completely different to a traditional one. And
you use drones, would you?
Oh God, no! I wouldn't know how to use a drone. I wouldn't have a clue. No, a friend of mine, he does aerial photography and drone work. Oh right. God, no, don't give me a gadget, no.
So Paul, what I was going to ask you there was, before we move on, what are you working on at the moment?
Okay, well, I'm working on the jellyfish, and then you're talking about the sculptor. So a friend, my wife's nephew is a fisherman, and he pulled up a bone from the Porcupine Bank off Galway, which is a whale bone. It's a humpback whale bone. So I'm going to be carving this now in a little while. I'm working on the drawings at the minute. And it's 3.5 meters in length. It took 5 lads to lift this off the trailer. And it's the lower right jaw of a humpback whale. That bone is only 1/3 of the length of the whale. And so this is what I'm working on at the minute. It is full of oil at the minute, which needs to be bleached out of it before I can actually start carving it.
Now we're going to go to a Q&A, but I always ask the artist what influences them most in terms of other artists or people whose work they particularly like.
Yeah.
Could you give us just a quick summation of your views?
Every day I like a different artist, and every other artist is the exact same. So I'm exactly in that boat. But I've chosen a sculptural piece and I've chosen a painting because that's what I like today. This one is Dali's Christ. The reason I think this is an astonishing painting is its composition. Its concept to think and look down from across instead of the traditional that happened for 2,000 years of people looking up or looking high. The imagination to be able to conceive of this composition is off the scale, and that's why I love this painting.
Yeah,
it's just off the scale. The other one is a sculpture. It's called Cloudgate. I paint a lot of bubbles in my paintings because it gives me a chance to create a different reality within the painting. This is Cloudgate by our man Kapoor. It is, again, it's jaw-dropping. It's just jaw-dropping. My youngest daughter was over there and she got her photographs. You see all the photographs of people standing in it, but they're only there for tourism and to get their image in with it. But what they don't realize is they're also creating a reflected reality in it. Again, conceptually, this sculpture is unbelievable. And then also to convey that and get a city to actually install it. I'd say it's eye-watering to figure out how much it cost to produce that, because it is incredible. It's wondrous.
And you may have said it, sorry if you did. Is it made of stainless steel?
I think it's polished stainless steel. Yeah.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. All right.
And the polishing stainless steel is some job. You know, the spike or the spire or the whatever they have in Dublin.
Yes.
I've seen a documentary about them polishing that steel, and it took months and months for them to bring it up. To do that, Cloudgate must have, couldn't even imagine the amount of hours it would have taken to do that. Yeah. But anyway, so those are my two choices for today. They'll change tomorrow.
Yes, I'm sure. All right, listen, we're going to go straight over to the Q&A. And there are a number of ones written here, but I'm just going to see if we can get a few people to come on and just talk to us and ask questions or whatever. Maeve, did you want to ask a question?
No, I haven't really got a question, except I met Paul first at the Dublin Plein Air and more recently at the Boathouse Painters exhibition. So it was great to see your studio, Paul, and to hear your interesting life story.
Thank you.
So thanks very much, Alan, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Maeve. Thanks a lot.
I'll say something, Alan.
Yes.
I write poetry, and I find these paintings quite poetic, you know, as like narrative poems. So when I look at the content, there's so much content in them that and they're so interesting and otherworldly, and there's so many ways you could look at the work, and it's so detailed in its painting and in the technique and the layers and colors, and could be very interesting. It's like they're like poetry to me. That's the way I see them.
Yeah, thanks for that, Pauline. And I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. I think there's one thing that Paul and I were chatting about on Thursday when we were just having a wee chat prior to this, is the whole business of genre and media. You know, in that Paul will not just confine himself to one thing. He's happy to take on any sort of project. Am I right there, Paul? Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, it's been through my life, but I was saying to you, you know the singer Linda Ronstadt. She was asked once, you know, why do you play so many different genres of music? And she said, because I follow the art. Well, for me, that's the exact same. I don't confine myself to one furrow. I just wouldn't be able to do it. I've been painting all my life, but professionally I've been painting 30 odd years, and it would bore the hell out of me, you know. It basically, you'd become an illustrator, and that's just not for me. I like to investigate. I like to investigate materials. I like to learn. And so that's why I just go wherever the art brings me, and I'm happy to do it. I love it.
I think the whalebone is a very good example of that.
Yeah.
So, you know, suddenly this arrives and you say, a piece of art.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for it.
Well, to be honest with you, everything I look at in terms of art.
Yes.
Somebody challenged me there a couple of years ago with an old wooden post that was a lookout post for the RNLI in the early 1900s, and it was rotting. And they said, "Bet you can't make a piece of art out of that." And I said, "Just watch me." And so it took me 6 months to do, but I created something. So I follow the news, as they say, you know.
Very interesting. Okay, anybody else like to make a comment?
Yeah.
Yes, Maria.
Yes. Hi. Thank you, Alan. Thank you for having us, and congratulations to Paul for his amazing, fabulous work. I have 3 questions to Paul. One is, I read the questions and then I think it's better, no? The first question is if Paul prefers sculpture or painting. The second question is, does he always use a model, you say, or a subject?
Yes.
And regarding to this question, the third question is a little bit, is a silly question, but I don't know if I can ask it, but I'll try. I'll ask it.
Please do. Please do.
Regarding the painting Sea Change Generation, I think that's the name, Sea Change Generation. When there's the girl and behind is the
Iceberg.
An iceberg. That's the word. Yeah. The left, I was surprised by the details, the perfection of the details, particularly the feet of the girl. And it seems to me that the left feet has only 4 fingers. So that's why I ask you if you use a model, and maybe the model has one left finger. I mean, one finger was missing, or if you did it on purpose. Thank you.
Paul, do you want to work backwards from that, and maybe just
the first question again?
So
the first question is okay.
No, please go on.
The first question, if Paul is sculpting or painting, what?
They're both the same to me, so I wouldn't have a preference for either. I certainly, in terms of longevity, I started off as a painter. New Zealand threw in sculpting to me, and I'm very happy with both. I suppose the priority would be painting to me. Priority would be painting, but which I prefer. I wouldn't have a preference, to be frank.
Okay, and your second question?
Working from models, I've worked from models, and I work from photographs. In this day and age, you have to do both. It's practicalities, to be quite frank. The third part is Theo. He has long hair, so I can understand why you know.
I was just going to say that.
And that was just his small toes sitting behind, so that's the reason. I don't know. I'd have to look at that again. That's never come to my attention. In fact, if it is only 3 toes, I should come up with a good story about that. But no, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Very good. Thanks, Maria Gabriella, for that.
Hello, Alan.
Yeah. Hello.
Alan, I'd just like to say to Paul, what a great job he does in running the plein air in Fingal. I don't know how he gets the time to do it, because it must take a lot of time and effort. And it's a wonderful experience and has a huge following. And every year I do it, I say I won't do it again. It's very intimidating. But I think he runs it to make it very accessible, and a great contribution, I think, to local artists and to people from a wider area. So thank you, Paul.
Very welcome. Very welcome. I like being involved in the arts in all sorts of ways, and that's one of my contributions. And it's over the last few years, it's been a great community build up. It's very big now, and thanks all of them. Yeah.
Okay, and that's echoed by Marion Shelley, who says, excuse me, I just want to thank you, Paul, for the wonderful, inclusive way you and your team operate the Dublin Plein Air Festival. So you've got a few fans out there, Paul. Excellent. Okay, anybody else before we wrap? No? Okay, all right. So we leave it there. Paul, thank you so much. That was really, really interesting and very comprehensive in terms of your analysis of all the work you do and the videos you did. And thank you to your son also for helping out on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was tremendous. It was tremendous.
And thank you for creating this project. I know you were saying it was just you fell into it, but it's become a real important archive, particularly for Irish artists. And I don't think people realise how important it is going to be into the future, because it's a real deep dive into the arts here in Ireland.
Yeah.
And I hope you continue it for many years.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, folks, listen, thank you all for joining us. We're going to be back on air in 2 weeks' time on Saturday fortnight, this day fortnight. And Mary A. Kelly is going to be the artist who's joining us. And Mary is not only a visual artist, but she's also a filmmaker. And I think that's going to be a fascinating interview as well. So again, thank you all for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, give it an old thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. It all helps, okay? So thank you. And Paul, thanks again. Take care.
Thank you,
Cheers now.
Alan.
Bye-bye.
Bye.